What's going on, everybody? Marvel Cross 316 back with another comic book flashback. And today, folks, we are looking at the Amazing Spider-Man issue number 104. This issue came out in January of 1972. And today, folks, we are seeing the conclusion here to this story here with Ka-Zar, as well as the return of Kraven the Hunter. We saw him return last issue. He is in Ka-Zar's hidden jungle, the Savage Land, and man, do we have a action-packed story to look at today. And so let's go ahead now and get started with this issue. Great cover, by the way. And so let's go ahead now and get started. Today's issue is brought to you by Stan Lee, who edited this issue. We have Roy Thomas on the writing, Gil Kane on the artwork, Frank Giashoa on the inking, and Artie Simek on the lettering page. I mean, talk about a cliffhanger. Last issue, our wondrous web spinner went soaring through the air with the greatest of ease, only to find a few moments later that he had landed in quicksand. And it is pulling Spider-Man down quickly here. Today's title is The Beauty and the Brute. And so how did it all start? Well, it all started on a late night talk show when this guy named Calkin was just talking about his discovery of a huge-like creature, this alien-like creature in the Antarctic campsite. And so this intrigues J. Jonah Jameson, and Peter and Gwen came along for the ride. This is supposed to be the greatest scoop of all time to help out Jameson in his newspaper. And by the time they made it to the Savage Land, we see here that they came across Gog. It's this alien-like creature. He made his first appearance last issue, and we learned that Kraven the Hunter is the one that is controlling Gog, that Gog is a servant to Kraven. And we're going to learn exactly the relationship between Kraven and Gog. Now, we saw that Gog took Gwen hostage, and we saw that Peter Parker was forced to change into Spider-Man here, and only to find out that he then falls into quicksand. So what we see now is he's going to use his web shooter here. He then is going to shoot one thin web line here, but the tree branch breaks and it falls right on top of Spider-Man, and it damages his web shooter. And so that web shooter is broken. And so he seems like he's helpless here to basically die in this quicksand, when all of a sudden we see that Ka-Zar is going to come to the rescue and save Spider-Man from the quicksand. And Ka-Zar is then going to tell Spider-Man that he needs to leave the Savage Land because it is very dangerous. But we see that Spider-Man is going to reveal to Ka-Zar that there's a girl named Gwen, and he's going to go. He'll have to go through Ka-Zar and Zabu, the saber-tooth tiger, if he has to go and save her. And so we see that Ka-Zar understands now that Gwen must hold something very dear to Spider-Man's heart. And so he's like, well, what are we waiting for? We need to go save her then. And so we see that Ka-Zar and Spider-Man are going to team up here. Meanwhile, we see that Kraven the Hunter is going to reveal to Gwen what his plan is. We saw that the reason why he sent Gog to capture Gwen is because he wants Gwen to be his queen. And the reason for this is because Kraven wants to be the ruler of the Savage Land, not Ka-Zar, him. That's his biggest goal. And so he says, still, because I've chosen you for my mate, it is good that you should know. You see, I once battled Ka-Zar, the self-proclaimed ruler of this lost world. And that was in Astonishing Tales number 2. But we saw that Ka-Zar was able to defeat Kraven in that issue. And so what we see is that while he was brooding and stuff, and he couldn't help but hate Ka-Zar for being a ruler and a victor of the Savage Land, he's going to then return in this jet here. And he comes without notice as he travels in the sky, having the clouds cover his ship. And when he lands, he's looking through the Savage Land. He's wanting to battle Ka-Zar again. When all of a sudden he comes across this airstruck, this huge raft here. It's like an alien spaceship. And so he's like, I gotta check this out. He said, wherever it came from, it must have attempted to land here and it touched down in the swamp instead. And so he gets on board. He's looking at all the machines, the computers, this mammoth chamber here, when all of a sudden he hears something in the corner, and it's this tiny little alien-like creature. He could probably fit in his hand. That's how small this person is. It's Gog. It's just this alien newborn child. And what Kraven is going to do is he's going to discover there's another egg as well, metallic egg, but it's his sister, and Gog's sister has died in the plane crash. And so what Ka-Zar is going to do is he's going to bring up Gog here as like a child, and we see that Kraven is going to be like a father to Gog. And over time, as days pass, we see Gog's size begins to get increase here. He gets bigger and bigger by each day, to the point where he is now a huge giant. And so we see that Kraven called or named him Gog after the biblical giant. And so that is how Kraven discovered Gog, and now Gog serves Kraven. And so he says, each man must find his niche, girl, the place where he can stake his claim to fortune, to power. This land is mine, and no one shall wrest it from me. Meanwhile, we see Spider-Man and Ka-Zar are listening to the entire scenario. So what their plan is Spider-Man is going to lead off and distract Gog here. So Gog is going to run away, and Kraven's like, where are you going, Gog? And he said, what in the world? And then meanwhile, while Spider-Man is hot on the trail and Gog is after him, we see that that's going to give Ka-Zar the excuse to go after Kraven here. So Kraven is going to be then hit right in the back by Ka-Zar here, and Ka-Zar is going to come to the rescue of Gwen here, and they have an epic battle here. Good stuff here, I have to say, with action scenes drawn by Gil Kane. We see that Kraven's going to use every defense he has, but Ka-Zar will just not go down. Ka-Zar is ready. He is ready, but he wasn't ready for those electro bursts. And so down goes Ka-Zar. We see that Kraven is then going to pick up this huge stone here when all of a sudden Zabu, the saber-tooth tiger, comes to the aid of Ka-Zar here. But he's like, no matter. He said, I will still take you down. Ka-Zar then spears Kraven right in the stomach here and lands a few more punches to Kraven. But this is one epic battle. Like I said, these two are evenly matched. They are evenly matched in strength here. And then we see that Kraven then is going to say, yes, I surrender, Ka-Zar, long enough to reach the plastic cord hidden within my belt, long enough to do this. And he's going to then use that cord and try to use it as a noose here and try to choke the life out of Ka-Zar here. But Ka-Zar still is able to get out of this, causing, and with that kick, to cause Kraven to fall off that cliff to his, I would have to think he has to die in this. So this could be the apparent death of Kraven, but crazy stuff. We don't see Kraven in the rest of this issue, so we are led to assume that Kraven died after falling off that cliff. Meanwhile, Spider-Man is still being chased by Gog, and he's wondering if Ka-Zar is having any luck in fighting Kraven and saving Gwen's life. And so he's going to be running away from him, only to find himself then coming right in the face of this humongous dinosaur, this T-Rex. And this T-Rex now is going to be after Spider-Man. But we see Gog is then going to fight this Tyrannosaurus Rex here. I mean, one epic battle, monster versus monster, to the death. But we see that Gog is able to defeat this dinosaur by breaking his neck. And so Spider-Man tries to get out of the way, but Gog notices Spider-Man, so then Gog is still after Spider-Man. But Spider-Man, unfortunately, has to lead Gog into that quicksand. He had no other choice. And so Gog, unfortunately, is going to die in this issue as he sinks to the bottom of the quicksand. And Spider-Man didn't feel too good about that, but he had to do what he had to do. And so we see that Spider-Man is now going to change back to Peter Parker in time for him to come up with an excuse. And we see that Jameson thinks that both Peter and Gwen have died when in comes Ka-Zar to the rescue with Gwen in his arms. And I mean, he is super happy to know that she's okay. But she asks J. Jonah Jameson, hey, where is Peter at? And Jameson's like, I guess you didn't see Gwen. That monster struck him, knocked him over a cliff into the river, and we lost him. But in the corner of his eye, he sees Spider-Man swinging through the jungle, and he's like, Gwen, anybody, did you see what I... No, I guess you didn't. He just got to me. Must have imagined it. It couldn't have been him. Not down here. It just could. And here comes Peter, and he's like, hello, people. Anyone got a kind word and a cup of coffee for a slightly mussed shutterbug? And Gwen's so happy to see him, she goes and hugs him. And Peter's like, I'd go through it all over again for another welcome home like this. And Gwen's like, don't you dare, Peter Parker. Don't you dare. And so this is how we end the issue, folks. We see Ka-Zar is going to wave them goodbye as they get back on their helicopter, and they're going to make it back to New York safe and sound, folks. So that is how we end this issue. I hope you liked it. Coming up next, folks, we'll be looking at issue number 105. We have more surprises, more thrills coming up next. But before we look at that issue, go ahead now and drop a like on this video by clicking that like button. Subscribe if you have not. I'd love to see that subscribe button be clicked just by you so that you can watch more videos just like this. And as always, folks, keep reading comics.